Hey there, good evening. Nice to see you. Time for the Bronx Buzz. As you might know, this is BronxNet's program where we do two segments. We talk to reporters and writers and editors and journalists and all different people who put stuff out so that you can get a little background behind what's going on. And in our second segments, we usually do, arts or performance. And there is a Bronx gallery having its 50th anniversary, and the artist has been around for 50 years making artwork in the Bronx. We're going to do that in our second segment. In our first segment, we're going to talk to a great young reporter. She is a reporter for the Mott Haven Herald and the Hunts Point Express. We are greeting Christine Zeiger for the first time. Nice to see you, Christine.
Very nice to be here.
I'm going to say it. You don't have to say it. She's at the U.S. Open. Unfortunately, Gary has to work. She's out there at the Open. That's the way life goes. But congratulations on that. But to kind of more important things, just a little bit about you. So you are attending the Craig Newmark School, the journalism school. Is that what's going on? A lot of the reporters at that paper are. Tell us all about what you've been doing at the Newmark School.
Yeah, happy to. Yeah, hi everybody. It's nice to be here. As Gary mentioned, yeah, I'm a student at the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism and also a reporter for the Hunts Point Express and Mott Haven Herald. I'm an engagement journalism student, which means that I'm focusing a lot on audience engagement, community engagement. So trying to find ways of really understanding our audiences and really giving the communities that we serve the news that they need to survive and thrive in our city.
That's
Uh,
wonderful. Now you are from the Bronx or from elsewhere? And
I'm
it's okay if you are. We accept people from all over the world.
so I've lived in the Bronx for 12 years. I'm from Westchester County,
Okay.
but I work in the Bronx as well as go to school in New York City. So I work at Manhattan University, Manhattan College now at Manhattan University. So
I was going to mention that, but you brought it up first. Okay.
I'm considering myself a Bronxite at this point.
Well, no, you're certainly entitled to be. And I'm always interested, especially people, because you've been doing this for a little while, not for a long while. What are your impressions of covering the Bronx, specifically the southernmost part of our borough at Mott Haven and Hunts Point?
So I think what's interesting is, different communities have different needs, but I think as humans and New York City residents and Bronx residents, we have a lot of the same goals, right? Like we want great lives for our families, we want great lives for ourselves, and we want to have the tools to survive and thrive here.
And,
Um,
and to achieve those things.
and to achieve those things. So it's like how do we do that? And what is the role we play as journalists in order to sort of help the communities we serve as well as yeah.
It sounds like you have your feet on the ground about it, but the way that you describe Bronx people, and I'm listening to it, trying to be objective about it. Oh, so you mean to say we're Americans with the same needs as people all across America, even though they cut out the Bronx and they say, "Oh, the Bronx," but we're American people. We have the same needs about feeding our family, being able to afford our rent. We want safe streets and safe communities. You wrote a story about an aspect of life, two aspects of life actually, that are very interesting and I think very important and underappreciated. And let's start with the libraries. The headline I will give you is Libraries Composting Program Spared from Cuts Citywide, but South Bronx residents are still waiting to benefit. Let's start with the libraries. It's so hard for me to say, nah, we don't need libraries. Got to have our libraries. And so, what's going on down there in the South Bronx?
Yeah, so we all need our libraries, basically. And so essentially what's going on is that two major branches in the South Bronx, the Melrose branch and the Hunts Point branch of the New York Public Library, they've both been closed since the pandemic. So this has obviously created an enormous disservice for residents. We know that libraries serve as cooling centers. We know that people will just like reading. We know that people utilize the Wi-Fi that libraries offer. And when you don't have those things, like they're community centers, they're community institutions. institution. So when you don't have those you end up traveling farther to access the library, or you just don't go at all, which is a huge problem.
Going back to your original precept about the Bronx, people want good lives, high quality lives. This is the kind of thing that, certainly when I was growing up, we're quite used to, but nobody in any neighborhood should be denied. Now they said they were being renovated. Do I understand that? They were closed for renovations, and then they said they were ready to open, but at least according to your reporting, the date was inaccurate, said it would be removed shortly for the date they said they were going to open. And now they don't know when the city budget will allow them to reopen. I think it stinks. I'm sorry. I'm allowed to put a commentary up there. I think you've got to reprioritize ourselves. What are the hopes now for the libraries, in especially in those neighborhoods? Listen, let's not pretend. I mean, these are neighborhoods of need, and this kind of service you said provides Wi-Fi. That's vital for people who may live in places where they don't have Wi-Fi. Just for example. So, what do you think? Are we ever getting our libraries back?
So because there was money allocated, right, for libraries in the budget deal that was passed in June, the goal is for these libraries obviously to reopen. At this point, I do not believe either of them have been, at least not at the published date of the story that
Right,
we're
right.
referring to.
So that's gone, but nobody's making any promises then, right?
At this point, that is exactly true,
Wow.
Gary.
Now listen, we could take it 50 times further, because I know the council members have been all over the budget. Council member Salamanca and council member Farias, I believe, who represent those areas, I'm sure are very concerned about the funding. I guess we could find out from them. But your reporting is very important, because having this dialogue even is important, and so we appreciate that. Let's talk about the second half of your reporting on community composting. Now, I'm going to tell you again, much like I'm a fan of libraries, and you can ask my wife, I'm crazy about making sure we handle the composting. Now, my building, and I live in the neighborhood that you're seeing there, which is Van Cortlandt Village. We have the brown bins in our building. I don't know what the status is of everywhere else, but now they're talking about community composting, I guess having public brown bins. But that also seems to be delayed. You tell me what's going on.
So curbside composting is coming to the Bronx October 6th, but essentially with the New York City budget deal that was passed, there was some money that was allocated for community composting, but essentially it didn't. So an example, right? So the organization Grow NYC, before the budget cuts last year, there were food scrap drop-off sites in our neighborhoods and also all over the city, where people could stop by, drop off their vegetable scraps, and I believe some meat, some bones as well. And they would basically get an education from the Grow NYC employee about why is composting important, what can you drop off, etc. So that education piece is really critical. And because of the limitations of the budget, those food scrap drop-off sites were forced to close. So that creates a disservice for our community, because you can put these services places, but unless you really explain to people what they are, why it's important, like
and
this is
and
what you
and,
need to
and
get
also
community buy-in.
and also how to do it, because you've got to know what is, what you can conserve, etc. The other thing which you didn't mention, but there is an enormous climate environmental benefit to this. We talk about rats. How do you get rid of rats? Well, you don't leave food scraps around, and if you have them in these secure places and the city carts them away and then uses them for compost, etc., then we have all done a really good thing. So that's another item that kind of surprises me that hasn't gotten done. And I live in the Bronx, and I've seen the flyers and everything else. it's been very surprising because they were very enthusiastic. I think I got a flyer from the city that said big news, composting coming to your neighborhood and all that. And then I get a thing, oh, by the way, the composting is going to be delayed or whatever. Again, is it very much like you said, that we're right now, like you said, with the libraries, we just don't know what the status is?
Well, I believe that October 6th still is the day.
Still is the day.
That's my understanding,
Yeah.
because I also got that flyer in the mail. But the community composting is just it's a little bit different. It's these other it's different organizations that are educating people on composting and also are bringing organic matter to facilities that are properly turning it into fertilizer that can be used to enrich soil.
Well, listen, any proper use is a good use. Listen, I want to give you one trivia thing that maybe you are not aware of. Many years ago, the USTA ran a certified tennis tournament in Crotona Park. And we had a lot of the people who would qualify for the U.S. Open competing at the tennis courts in Crotona Park, and I know that because I did play-by-play for all of those events. So I hope you'll be out there and you'll be not thinking of all the great stuff you got to produce for the Mott Haven Herald and the Hunts Point Express. But the last question I have for you: what's coming up next? You're working on something coming up next? You got something for us?
So for my my capstone for the Craig Newmark Grad School of Journalism.
That's a big thing.
Yeah, it's a big thing. I'm going to be working on, with a colleague of mine, a engagement project that aims to understand the voting behavior of young people in our neighborhoods. So I'm actually going to be working pretty closely with the Mott Haven Herald and Hunts Point Express to understand the needs of young voters, understand what barriers there might be to voting in November, and sort of what people are thinking. We know this is a really important election, and we know also that our neighborhoods have a very low rate of voter participation,
especially youth vote.
Especially youth vote, exactly.
Yeah, and this, of course, is we're coming up to a very obviously consequential election, and so that'll be fascinating. We're going to look for that in the Mott Haven Herald and the Hunts Point Express. So Christine Zeiger, have a good time at the Open, but also thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for doing community engagement materials for the Mott Haven Herald and the Hunts Point Express. Thank you so much. And congrats also to Manhattan, used to be college, Manhattan University. And I'm sure we'll see you around town in one form or another. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day.
You too. We are going to take a short break. And when we come back, as I said, there's an artist celebrating his 50th anniversary and with a big celebration this coming weekend. And we'll do that in a moment. Don't go away.
19.7% of Bronxites currently experience food insecurity. Meanwhile, instead of these nice, colorful foods, this is the best food that they have access to. If this sounds like you, there are a bunch of resources to get healthy food for free or cheap. If you want to help, you might consider donating or volunteering in one of these places. Community fridges like this one are all over the city, and allow New Yorkers to conveniently donate extra food to people who might need it. Go to this link and find your nearest one. Food banks and pop-up events like these provide millions of healthy meals to families in need. These organizations are distributing meals to Bronxites as we speak, and are always accepting donations and volunteers.
there, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. I am thrilled because one of my friends, listen, when you put your friends on TV, it's a nice thing. But one of my buddies, Ron Terner, is with us. He's at the Focal Point Gallery on City Island. Ron, always nice to see you, because it's nice to see you, but also because you always have great stuff going on there at the Focal Point Gallery. And usually it's either bringing kids in or other community people. But this one is like a Ron Terner celebration. Tell us about then and now.
Well, it's good to see you, and you have been a good friend for many of those years, and I appreciate that. And you've been a big supporter of the gallery by asking me to come on your show, frequently. So I'm celebrating 50 years of Focal
50.
Point Gallery.
Let me just underscore that. 50 years, man. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, Anderson. Put him back on the camera. I couldn't resist. I wanted to put an underline under the number 50. Go ahead.
Yes. So I came to City Island in 1974. I had a dream of opening up a gallery to exhibit my work, and then to exhibit other people's work, other artists who I felt needed to have their work seen. So over the years, that's what I've been doing, giving exhibitions, and they average from about, I would say, 10 times a year out of the year, 12 months, I think about 10, and you multiply that by 50, but that's how many shows
500 shows.
I've mounted and climbed up that ladder. That's what's kept me.
Just curious, I don't think I've ever asked you this before. Were you an artist beforehand, or opening Focal Point Gallery really moved you to the next level?
I think moving to Focal Point Gallery and living on City Island has matured me as an artist.
Well, you are 50 years older.
Yeah, no, I was involved in photography for more than 5 years before coming to City Island with the dream. I came straight out of photography school. I went to Germain School of Photography down in the city, which
Here
was
we go. Here's the photograph.
Lower right-hand corner.
With the hair.
Long hair. I had hair back then. And those are my friends. We were taking our lunch break. And so right after I graduated, I took part in a arts and crafts fair on City Island, the very first one, which was organized by Warren Sonberg, who created what was called back then the Renaissance Association.
Wow.
So somehow I got on their mailing list and came out here to show my work, my portfolio, straight from school. And the response was overwhelming. The people were wonderful that I met there. I set up my work during the Arts and Crafts Fair, sold a picture to Peter Coyle. He bought my very first picture.
Wow. It's amazing to me that you remember all the names. I do want to mention, which we'll mention again, there is an opening reception on Saturday at 1:00.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I am planning to be there. And so people are all invited, and there's going to be music, as you can see, and all that kind of stuff. But just going back in history, so then we have another picture of your first gallery at 296 City Island Avenue. It's a self-portrait from 1974.
Right. Well, that's me. That's how I lived in the back of my gallery. It was a huge space. The front was the gallery, the middle was a studio and dark room, and the back is where I lived. The only problem with the space is it didn't have heat or hot water. So
a little issue, yeah.
Yeah, little problem. So I installed that potbelly stove, and then the copper coils was the idea of a friend a scientist that I knew from Albert Einstein, who said, you can get hot water if you put copper coils around it. And Peter Coyle, the gentleman who bought my very first photograph, and he was like one of my first friends that I made on City Island, was a plumber. And
he got it done for you.
So he did the copper coils around the stove for hot water.
So the theme is then and now. So that's the then, but now there's another picture of you living somewhere else, right? So there you are, and we'll just say it,
With
and we'll
my
put
dog, now Monita.
Okay, so I'm just going to say it. So this one is a picture of you living above the gallery now, right? And you're at 321 City Island Avenue. For anybody who doesn't know, right there in downtown City Island. You got to at minimum stop by and say hello to Ron anyway, which is what I do when you go to have dinner or lunch or whatever. You come to the Bronx Music Podcast at the Artist. You can stop by and see Ron, but also be there on Saturday. Now, what about a picture of? Let's talk about mom. Now, you
Yeah.
communicated to me, and I had no idea. This is a picture of you with your mom. Your mom is not well right now.
No, unfortunately. Then I did a self-portrait. That the first one was a picture of me and my mom many years
Then,
ago.
and
That
then there's
that
one
was
of her
then.
now.
And now my mom is dying. I made a promise to her that she could die at home. And that picture, I did a self-portrait. This is brand new. That picture, I did that just yesterday.
Wow.
What's important about that picture, it tells quite a story. I'm keeping my promise to her. She's she's hanging in there, and I think she's going to hang in there to be alive for me to celebrate officially 50 years. She's been a major supporter. She's been my go-to person. Um, I've run every idea by her. She has opinions about everything. Sometimes,
like everybody's mom. Yes.
but you know what happens? Even though I don't agree, in the long run, she always ends up being right.
Moms always know best.
Right.
And I know you did communicate to me that even though this is a difficult time for her, she had told you get that 50th party done, and that's what you're going to do one way or the other.
Right.
Right.
The thing that she used to do for all my openings from the very beginning, she used to bake cookies. And I think people came just for her cookies. So
Well,
I
you'll
won't have
will
her cookies, but she'll be here in spirit.
she certainly will, and you'll be carrying that on. Now there was another picture of grandma, I think, that we do
Yes.
have that picture.
That's Ann Kellogg, my grandmother. That's my mother's mother. And that picture was done in 1973. She's the reason why I became an artist. That's her in her studio and in front of one of her paintings. I grew up watching her paint. I wanted to become a painter originally, but when I held a camera, it was an immediate response that I was going
This
to
is
do
what you got to do. You know what I want to jump off from there, and we have featured them before. Ron, and I'll give you just one example. Ron every morning goes out to Orchard Beach with his dog and takes pictures of people he has seen there. And one of the things, excuse me, one of the things, and I'm going to be the one to articulate this very clearly. You are an incredible photographer of portraits. You take portraits of families on Mother's Day. You take portraits of all the people, just about everybody on City Island has had a portrait taken of them. And so that portrait of your grandmother, will use that to just illustrate that you are just an absolute legendary portrait taker. I don't know what the term is.
Thank you.
But really, Ron has just, so you got to stop by Focal Point anyway and see those portraits. They're everywhere. They're on T-shirts. I mean, he's got the whole thing done, and you've just been one of the most important artists, I think, in the borough of the Bronx for 50 years. I want to show. Let's see. Did we have another picture? Was there one other picture that Ron sent? I forget already. Was there one other? Yes, this one. Explain what this is, and there are some of those hanging behind you.
So this is the exhibition. Well, not just this piece, but my concept was I wanted to go through the different areas of photography and see what I've done and what I've accomplished within the 50 years. and I realized I'm still producing at the same time. That's why the title Then and Now.
Then and now, yeah, that makes
So
sense.
this is a set of boxes, specifically cigar boxes. I've been collecting cigar boxes, and I want to mention the cigar store on City Island was very, very helpful. They were very, very good by giving me
The
cigar
boxes,
boxes.
yeah.
So the idea was to edit and select what I thought represented an area of interest. And
So
in that
when people come on Saturday at 1 o'clock and hang out and get the music and a couple of bites to eat, they'll also see that. Now I want to do what I think was one of my favorite, because they're all my favorite, but one of my favorite art projects that you did was this project of Bronx women, of City Island women, and you made plaster casts out of them, and then ultimately turned them into lamps. And there were a bunch of them. How many of these did you do?
Oh my! I think I made at least 5 lamps, and I think more than 25 body sculptures.
Wow.
I call them photo sculptures because after the casting, I would take and create the photograph that I would wrap around the casting.
Oh,
But
so that's what those are,
transfer.
photos. Wow. Listen, Ron, I got a bunch of pictures of those. I remember them when that came out, and we
Yeah.
double checked the date was June 2020. But you've been a great artist, and Saturday is a way to celebrate the importance of art in the Bronx. You bring kids in, let them display their artwork. You bring communities in, you take pictures of people, and you have just been a dear friend and a great artist in the Bronx. Congratulations. I will be there like everybody else who's watching at 1 o'clock on Saturday. We'll have a good time and we'll celebrate Ron Terner, the Focal Point Gallery, and the importance of art in our borough of the Bronx.
Thank you. I just want to say one thing. I thank you for your support. I couldn't have done this without the support of City Island. It's why I love City
Yes.
Island. And of course, my parents and my mom particularly. I love you, Mom. Thank you so much.
I never met her, but I love her too. How about that? All the best. All right, that is going to do it for the Bronx Buzz. We thank Christine from the Mott Haven Herald and Hunts Point Express for joining us, and of course Ron, who's just blood and guts, roots for the Bronx, and that's what he does. And so that's it. We'll see you next week. The creek don't rise and the curtain don't fall. We'll be here. Good night.